if the emotions are not enough, if the photographs then and the way it was and the way it is now is not enough to get you motivated, as we all need to be, then let's have a conversation about the science behind it all. I'm very happy to introduce Dr. Bob Knight. He has 35 years experience in the state of Florida. He is the founder of the Howard T. Odom Florida Springs Institute. He'll tell us a little bit about that nonprofit organization, as well as he's an adjunct professor on the ecology of springs at the University of Florida, and he's very active in the restoration efforts of several springs throughout the state of Florida. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Bob Knight.
Thank you very much, Lisa, and thank you everybody for being here tonight. I can't follow that presentation. I wish we could just end it on that, but unfortunately I have to follow that presentation. And we're so lucky to have passionate people like John Moran, and thank you, John. It was just lyrical. Unfortunately, I have the problem of having to deal with the technical side of the springs issues. I'm an environmental scientist. Did my doctoral research at Silver Springs in the 70s. Studied under the person that first studied Silver Springs in the 50s, Howard T. Odom. It was our joint dream at that time in the 70s to have a research center at Silver Springs sometime in the future. Hopefully then, and we petitioned the University of Florida to set up such a center in the 70s. It didn't happen. There wasn't funding. There wasn't enough interest. And I just regret so much now that that didn't happen at that time, because if we'd had a research center studying our springs in the 70s, perhaps we would have known long ago how bad they were getting. And it's really in the last 2 decades that the problems in our springs really started emerging. Over the last 20-some years, there have been outcries throughout Florida that our springs were being degraded. The flows were declining. They were being polluted. There's tremendous springs champions. Jim Stevenson, formerly with the Florida Park Service, was one of those champions for springs. He still is. Wes Skiles, the photographer, the cave diver, was one of those champions for springs. He no longer is with us. And there are many other people that sounded the cry that John described so well today 20 years ago. And our state government actually came and helped support those efforts. For a period of 10 years, the state put $2 million a year into springs protection. We had the Florida Springs Initiative during that time. And that money was very well spent. It documented these problems. It resulted in multiple plans to overcome these problems, which all eventually fell on deaf ears. And the Florida Springs Initiative the funding declined over the last 3 years, and it was finally just halted in 2011. We had working groups at all our major springs during that time trying to develop restoration plans and public awareness of the springs issues, and that all went away with the Florida Springs Initiative. In 2010, I saw that coming, and I started the Florida Springs Institute that Dr. Odom and I had dreamed about 25 years before. It's a nonprofit organization. It's a shoestring organization. It's based on the best science available, and there is a lot of science available on springs. But its purpose is to fill the gap that is existing in our state government with really almost a complete cessation of research on the condition of springs, establishing a baseline, looking at whether or not they're improving in health or getting worse health. And the Springs Institute is doing as much as it can to pick up the slack on that. And we are developing restoration plans for multiple springs in Florida, including Silver Springs. And Silver Springs, of course, is still near and dear to my heart. I ultimately dream of a Springs Institute, a Woods Hole, if you will, a Friday Harbor, a Moat Marine at Silver Springs that's really documenting the health of our springs statewide and is looking to the future to make sure that they're managed correctly to achieve John's and my collective dream about springs. And I want to just give you some background on Silver today. It was the first tourist attraction in Florida. The picture on the left is the Hart steamboat line that was bringing tourists to Silver Springs as early as the 1850s. Brought Ulysses S. Grant to Silver Springs when he was running for his second term of office. It brought hundreds of thousands, millions of people to the state of Florida up through the 50s and 60s. There's still a tourist attraction in Silver Springs. And yet, it's a declining system. And if you've seen Ocala, you've seen the decline in that part of the Ocala Silver Springs area, because Silver Springs is not what it once was. It's not the most remarkable hydrographic feature in North America, as described by a scientist in 1850 that said it was comparable to the Mississippi River and the Niagara Falls. That's what people thought of Silver Springs 150 years ago. And they don't think that anymore when they go there. They say, what's the big deal? It was the original tourist attraction in Florida. Long before Disney World was here, people were going to Silver Springs from all over the world. It was attracting tourists to Florida. And no longer is it, of course, the tourist attraction in Florida. Orlando has stolen that and has also gotten a lot of the water that used to go to that tourist attraction. And as I like to say, someday when Orlando is no longer the biggest tourist attraction in Florida, Silver Springs will be flowing again and will once again be the biggest tourist attraction in Florida. It's our future. So I would like to show some slides, just talk about, this is my outline for my talk. Why is Silver Springs important? I've given you some of that. But part one is what's going on with groundwater withdrawals. What is really happening to our springs and our groundwater in Florida? It's really unbelievable what's happening, and I'm going to describe that to you. Part two is nitrogen contamination. This fertilizer, nitrogen is the main constituent in most of our fertilizer, what it's doing to our springs and groundwater. And part three on silver, the other big thing that's affected is it's lost its connectivity to the St. Johns River. There's a dam in the way, and the dam is, been a lot of talk for a long time about removing that dam, and it's actually the final sentence in my doctoral dissertation. Wouldn't it be an interesting experiment to remove the dam and see if Silver Springs recovers? Because the one thing I was most focused on studying was the loss of the fish populations in Silver Spring due to the construction of the Rodman Dam and the Kirkpatrick Dam. I will have a little bit of give you a little bit of information about the Adena Springs permit, just the latest in a long list of threats to Silver Springs, but a very big one, a very real one. And I'll just talk to you about what it would take to restore Silver Springs from a dry technical standpoint, not lyrical like my colleague John Marion. Okay, I want to put you in perspective. I don't know if you can see this pointer. That's Jacksonville. That's where we are tonight. This is Silver Springs in Marion County. We're several counties away. These two areas are fed by the same aquifer, the Floridan aquifer system, one of the largest aquifers in the whole world in terms of spatial extent and volume. And the Floridan aquifer is so amazing in Florida because this is the area where most of the recharge occurs to the aquifer from rainfall and where most of the springs are. There are over 1,000 documented artesian springs in Florida. It's the largest concentration of springs in the world. If there was a national park for springs, it would be North Florida. These are the springs along the Suwannee River, the upper Withlacoochee River, the Santa Fe River, the Itchtucknee River is right here. The Suwannee goes out to the coast. It's got springs all along it. In this part of Florida, there are two major springs. There's Silver and Rainbow over here, which I'll show in a minute. And then there's a series of springs along the St. Johns River. Those springs provide a significant fraction of your base flow. And it's your clearest base flow in the St. Johns River. You think you have a black water river in Jacksonville, it's nothing compared to, say, the St. Mary's River or the Osceola River, rivers that don't have spring inflows. You get this clear tannic water, and that's because the spring water dilutes the dark water that comes in from runoff. So why is Silver Springs important? It has the highest long-term flow record of any spring in the world. It's the headwaters of the Silver River, which is a 5-mile river. It's an unbelievable river if you've ever gone down it. You feel like you're in a boat on an aquarium for an hour going down over this system that's full of grass and fish and wildlife. Without it, the Ocklawaha would never be clear. The Ocklawaha River gets its base flow from Silver River, and then the Ocklawaha in turn feeds the St. Johns River. It's the oldest tourist attraction in Florida, the longest history of scientific investigation of springs, and it's an economic engine for Marion County, even though they deny it. When the state did a study in 2004, they found out that Silver Springs was, at that time, even though it was on its way down at that time, was generating $62 million a year in direct revenues. That's not all the ancillary revenues of businesses and property values, just direct revenues, and was employing over 1,000 people. And like I said, these writers from the past tell us what Silver Springs looked like. Well, we have some problems. There's 19 million of us in Florida. We all use water. Nobody's innocent of that. Even those that drink whiskey and Coca-Cola and things like that, it all comes from water. You know, it's not just bottled water. It's all these drinks are water. You know, they're 99.9% water. And it comes from somewhere. Most of it comes from the Florida aquifer. And here's some of the ways we get it out. You know, we spray it on the land, it evaporates, and we lose it. And just to give you some statistics on how much water we use in Florida, the last time this was estimated for the whole state was in 2005. The estimated groundwater use in Florida, that's just, and that's mostly the Florida aquifer, but also some groundwater in South Florida, was 4.2 billion gallons a day, 4.2 billion gallons every day. The public water supply accounted for 2.2 billion gallons a day, and agriculture over the whole state was 1.3 billion gallons a day. So that's a lot of water. That's a lot of water. It's not that much compared to what we get in rainfall, but it's a lot when you consider the flow in springs. It's a very, in fact, that 4 billion gallons a day is probably close to half of the flow of all the springs right there. And these are the rates that public use of groundwater were going up over the years. This is the groundwater use here. There's been a little leveling between 2000 and 2005. There may be a decline this year. The USGS is doing another study. I think we're getting smarter about water, but we still haven't dealt with the fact that we were having impacts on springs in the aquifer as long ago as the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And if we're going to get back to the types of springs that John's talking about, we're going to have to go back, not forward, in terms of our groundwater use. And I'll just point that out. In the 3 water management districts where most of our springs occur, the St. John's District, the Suwannee River District, and Southwest Florida Water Management District, the total groundwater use is estimated to be 2.1 billion gallons a day. The St. John's District is the largest user at almost 1 billion gallons a day just by itself. The actual permitted wells in the St. Johns River Water Management District, which of course extends from south of Orlando all the way up here to Duval and Nassau counties, is about 1.5 billion gallons a day. So if everybody turns their wells on at the same time like they tend to do during a dry period, the actual pumping is probably more than 1 billion gallons a day. Southwest Florida, close to 1 billion gallons a day. And Suwannee River District's the small kid on the block, it's mostly undeveloped still, and most of the use is agricultural, about 240 million gallons a day. Well, what's happening as we're pumping this water is the groundwater levels are falling. That makes a lot of sense. This is a series of wells from the Suwannee River District on the right side to Duval County and the St. Johns River District over here. And this is a time record of the water levels in these wells, and the water levels in wells go up and down depending on how much rainfall we have and how much of that rainfall recharges the aquifer. But there's a long history of these wells going down, especially over here in Duval County where there's very little recharge. The rain does not recharge the aquifer over here, so anything that's pumped over here is essentially lost from the aquifer. And that has resulted in declines as much as 40 to 60, even 80 feet in localized areas around pumping centers under Duval County. And smaller declines, but nevertheless significant declines over in the Suwannee River Water Management District. In fact, what that's done is basically robbed groundwater that formerly, this is the historic watershed or spring watershed for the Suwannee River Water Management District here, this outer line. That line has been moving. The divide between the St. Johns River Water Management District pumping centers and the Suwannee River Water Management District pumping centers and springs has been moving over the last 70 years. And these numbers document that. It's declined in area about 1,900 square miles, is now no longer recharging the springs on the Suwannee River, and it's equivalent to quite a bit of water. What that does, that's caused by the pumping that's over here. It's not just Jacksonville, but it's the paper mills and it's agriculture in South Georgia as well as paper mills. And so the groundwater is flowing this way, the divide's flowing that way, and there's less water getting to the springs on the Suwannee River. It's about 130 million gallons a day as estimated by the U.S. Geological Survey, That's a very large flow. The city of Jacksonville's total permit now is about 150 million gallons a day. So something equivalent to that permit is no longer going to the Suwannee River Springs. And of course, that's having big effects. John showed you these same pictures. White Springs in the 1920s, when the flow was about 40 million gallons a day, 72 cubic feet per second. That's White Springs now. And this is happening all along the Suwannee River. There are hundreds of springs along the Suwannee River. All of them have flow declines. All the ones we have data for, we know have flow declines. And you can look at the others and you could see it. When these flow, before the springs dry up like this, they start running green, because what happens is they have such low flows, the river flows back into the springs with dark water, and when the water comes out of the spring, then it has dark water mixed with the clear water, and it looks green. So that's what's happening to the springs on the Suwannee River. Now, we're talking about silver tonight, and I just wanted to give you that because Jacksonville's part of this. Those of you that live in Jacksonville and Northeast Florida and Southeast Georgia, but we're all having these kinds of problems. This is Marion County, the home of Silver Springs here in the middle of the county, and Rainbow Springs in the western part of the county. These are consumptive, these are permitted wells, large wells, over 100,000 gallons a day, over 750 of them permitted in Marion County. And these are wells that are pumping. On most days, these wells are pumping. Some of them are public water supplies, some are agricultural wells. These are not private wells. There's tens of thousands of individual 4-inch wells in Marion County. We don't know how many because nobody keeps a record of it. But these wells are pumping the aquifer. They're like a lot of different straws into the aquifer, pumping it. And so we got some crazy things happening in Marion County. They're just being recognized. And one of the things is, if you draw a slice through the landscape, this is Silver Springs. This is the outlet of Silver Springs right here. This is the outlet from Rainbow Springs, 25 miles apart between these two springs. The outlet from Rainbow Springs is lower topographically than Silver Springs. It's real close to the coast, and it's 12 feet lower. And this is the ground surface between the two. You know, the relative ground surface, this scale's, you know, magnified. There's I-75, there's city of Ocala, and Fort King up on the hill there. And this is the land between the two. This is where the groundwater level is during a wet year, and historically during a wet year. This is where the groundwater is during a dry year. There's no divide between the two when this happens. When this groundwater level is pulled down enough, then all of a sudden you've got a downward slope all the way from the Springshed that feeds Silver Springs to Rainbow Springs. And what this appears to be doing is Rainbow appears to be pirating water from Silver now. So water that would have gone to Silver Springs, groundwater that would have come out of Silver Springs, fed the Silver River, fed the Ocklawaha River, fed the St. Johns River, now is going to the Withlacoochee River through Rainbow Springs. And this groundwater divide is moving. So this is where the divide used to be, and so the Springshed for Silver was bigger than the Springshed for Rainbow. Now it's probably moving to the east, and we don't even have enough data to describe this problem. The St. Johns River Water Management District discussed this in public for the first time to the Silver Springs Basin Working Group 2 years ago, and were asked at that time to go ahead and gather more data. They haven't done that yet. And unfortunately, we don't know how bad this has really gotten. But what we do know is that Silver Springs' flow is declining. It's like something falling off a cliff. This is the long-term flow at Silver Springs, 80 years of records. You got the annual variation, these diamonds going up and down. Wet years, you get high spring flows. Dry years, you get low spring flows. That's been going on for 50 years. All of a sudden, in the 1980s, this all changed, and silver started going down like a hot air balloon that ran out of hot air. And it's been coming down ever since. This is the daily flow. It's actually a few CFS, a few million gallons a day lower than it was when I did this on May 7th. But these are the annual average flows. Before 1980 or so, we never had a flow that was lower than this one. In the driest year, in the 50s, that was a very low flow, less than 600 cubic feet per second in Silver Springs. Now, it's almost every year we have flows lower than that, no matter how wet or dry they are. And we've got a flow during 2011 that's only 50% of that long-term average. Half of the flow of Silver Springs, on average, is gone. And we have daily flows now that are coming down. I mean, it's in free fall. And where Silver always had higher flows than Rainbow in the past, Now Rainbow always has higher flows than Silver. So basically what's happening in North Florida, we have the unintended groundwater transfer from the Suwannee River District to the St. Johns District because of a pumping center here in Northeast Florida. And we have an unintended transfer of groundwater from the St. Johns District down here to the Southwest Florida Water Management District. I guess this is all great, you know, it's tit for tat, but Suwannee River Springs are really suffering here. And so is Silver at the same time. So it's not funny, and I shouldn't make it light of it. That's the flow situation. In terms of nitrate and nitrogen pollution in the aquifer, I don't have good news there either. This is just the 2-mile radius around Silver Springs. This is the city of Ocala as it was in the 40s, the land use versus the land use in 2005. The area developed. You lost almost all the natural land use as you had urban land use fill in, and those areas that were natural forests were converted to high-intensity agricultural crops. So there was a 10-fold increase in the population in Marion County and in the Springshed for Silver since 1950, 10-time increase. And that led to a lot of fertilizer use and a lot of wastewater disposal. And typically in our yards and in our farms, we use about 200 pounds of nitrogen per year. That's the if you follow the recommendations on your fertilizer bags, that's what you're using, is about 200 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year. The natural input to the aquifer is 3 pounds from rainfall per acre per year. So we're almost 100 times higher than that. And of course, some things like watermelons use 400, 600 pounds per acre per year. And wastewater disposal systems could put even much higher loads in the groundwater. That's resulted in a calamity. We have contaminated the Floridan aquifer with nitrate, nitrogen. It's invisible. You don't see it in your drinking water, but you drink it. It's in all the wells in the western part of Marion County is high nitrate. This is a scale. The blue is the background level in the Floridan aquifer. The eastern part of Marion County, this area here is the Ocala National Forest, and it's protected, and it does not have nitrate in the groundwater. The western part of Marion County is not protected by any protective geologic formations, and it's not protected by land use protection, and it's contaminated with nitrate. And this is true throughout Florida. I'm not going to show you the whole state, but wherever we have these karst areas, we have nitrate contamination in Florida now in the groundwater. So the springs, Silver Springs and Rainbow Springs, both have nitrate concentrations coming out more than 20 times higher than the background levels. This is the increase in nitrate concentration over time at Silver Springs from the 50s when Dr. Odom studied it to the late 70s when I studied it to what it is today. It's just going up. And the amount of nitrogen coming out of Silver Vent was historically less than 50 tons per year. It's over 500 tons per year now. And if we go on this course of development and using the same amounts of nitrogen, it'll go up to 880 tons per year, as estimated by a St. Johns River Water Management District funded report. The safe level of nitrate in Silver Springs is thought to be down here somewhere around 0.35 milligrams per liter. We're at 1.2 now. And so DEP is coming in and saying, oh, we got to do something about this, right? And when did it go over the safe level? 60s? That's how long it's been polluted, and that's how long that inactivity. We're just now getting to dealing with the nitrate issue at Silver Springs, and it will take another 20 or more years to fix it if we're optimistic. The macrophytes, the big plants, the eelgrass and everything, the populations went down. They didn't go up with all that additional nitrate. What went up was the algae. The algae growing on the plants, epiphytic algae, doubled. The benthic algae, the filamentous algae you see on the bottom of Silver Springs now that makes the white bottom look green, came out of nowhere and is incredible increase. It's a 3,700% increase in the algal biomass in Silver Springs. That's what parts of Silver Springs look like now. Okay, the third big threat to Silver Springs is the loss of connectivity. The dam went in 1968. It was closed in 1968. Since then, manatees are risking their lives to come in there, and so they don't very often. Fish can't get in there. The channel catfish that were, if anybody's as old as I am, they saw the catfish, the big catfish in Silver Springs in the 50s. They're not there. The mullet that used to come in enormous numbers are rarely in the river, and they can get in and out occasionally when they open the locks. But we've lost the major part of the fish population in Silver Springs. One of the main attractants for Silver Springs was the fish. And we have all this algae that algae started showing up shortly after the dam was closed based on records that I kept when I was there in the 70s. So what are we going to do about it? We all think we can do something about it. We think by yelling enough and shining a bright light on these issues and putting the facts out to the public that something will change. It's going to take a lot of public opinion changing to get our leaders to change what they're doing, because everybody's comfortable going along. We're trying to make money. We're trying to build the economy, but we're doing it at the expense of Silver Springs. And so the issues are the ones I just went over. We have reduced flows at Silver Springs. They're catastrophically reduced currently during a drought year. We have elevated groundwater nitrate. It's an enormous issue. We've contaminated hundreds of millions of gallons of groundwater with nitrate at levels that are above those that can be tolerated by springs. And we've built a physical barrier in this case. This one's actually easy to take care of, because all you have to do is open the dam and the barrier's gone. And it's damn well over time for that, as some people would say. But here, with all this recognized, and I've been preaching to the choir for the last 5 years about these things, and we're being faced with another permit request. The Adena Springs Ranch permit is requesting over 13.2 million gallons a day. That's an average daily flow is what they're requesting. They came in and asked for 26 million gallons a day first, because apparently nobody told them that we were short on water in North Florida. Apparently when they went to the St. John's district, they got the story that, oh, there's plenty of water. You can just come here and bring your jobs. But they did say, by the way, you might want to take that down to 13 million gallons a day, because we think we can permit that. I'm just guessing this. And that's what they applied for, and that's what they're going to fight for. They already have their legal team in place to fight any challenge to this permit. They bought 30,000 acres for that ranch. They're going to grow grass-fed beef. And they are, that's a great thing. We all want grass-fed beef. We want healthy meat. And they bought this whole area. Well, here's Silver Springs, 5 miles from the edge of this farm. And this is just one farm. There's plenty of other farms in Marion County. It's just one more. But they're asking for 440 gallons per day for every acre of that farm. And the sustainable water use, if we let Silver Springs, say, lose 10 or 15% of its flow, would be more like 70 gallons per day of water for that farm. That's not what they're asking for. They want to put 30,000 head of cows on that property. The waste from 30,000 cows is roughly equivalent to 330,000 people. That's a lot of manure. The estimated nitrogen load is more than 1,200 tons of nitrogen per year. And they're going to have to fertilize this system, because they're going to use center pivot irrigation systems. They're putting in 135 wells is what they're hoping to put in with this permit. And they're going to put all those on center pivot irrigation pastures and then rotate the cows around them until they finally end their lives at the harvesting facility, the comfortable harvesting facility where all cows go to end their lives. And this is more humane than what cows do now, so I'm not arguing with it, but it's a lot of manure. And the way I figure it, if we were actually going to get Silver Springs down to a groundwater level, nitrate level that will be protective of it, the most they can put is about 10 pounds of nitrogen per acre per year. 10 tons total. I mean, 10 tons rather than 1,200 tons. So they're about 120 times higher than what I'd like to see and what their plan is. So we had a wonderful rally today. We had so much fun. The gentleman that owns this operation is named Frank Stronach. He's a Canadian. He's down here in Florida buying up land, and he's at least on surface very interested in doing the right thing down here. Apparently he was told that there was plenty of water. We need more beef in Florida, and he's applied for this permit. They had a great ceremony honoring him today, where he gave $1.7 million to the University of Florida to build an animal science research center in Citra. And a few of us went out there and just thought we'd get a glimpse of him when he came in, but the windows were too tinted, we couldn't see him. But they had a meeting today, and they had an honoring ceremony today that I think got his attention, that we're really not happy about this additional threat. He hasn't taken a drop of water, or very little water. He hasn't put any manure out there yet, but silver is already contaminated. It's already got low flow. And so he's coming into a perfect storm of problems here. And here's things you can do. This permit, if it's issued, And all the other permits have already been issued. Marion County's given them a permit. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection has given them a permit. The only permit that's left is a consumptive use permit that will be decided by the St. Johns River Water Management District Governing Board. And that's under consideration right now. So how do we restore Marion County and Silver Springs? Well, we have to implement water conservation. We can't keep taking more groundwater. We're way past the point of taking groundwater. We've over-allocated the resource based on the best science. We need to encourage improvements to wastewater and stormwater practices. Marion County's been trying to do this for years. They had great model ordinances that they were ready to adopt, and then the political climate changed and they did not adopt those ordinances. So Marion County springs are still not protected adequately. We need to encourage implementation of more protective agricultural BMPs. We all want food. We all like to eat, and we need to grow the food somewhere. We just need to do it in a sustainable way. And we need to provide tax incentives, I think, for the farmers that have already been fooled into thinking there was enough water for them to put out center pivot irrigation systems. We need to help them recover their costs, their sunk costs in these systems. One way to do this, there's a sustainable landscape in Florida, and it's a forested landscape. That's what Florida was before the pioneers got here. It was a forested landscape. And under forested landscape, forestry is an economic, I mean, it's a boon. I mean, you can grow longleaf pine forests and make money. Now, you can't make as much money as a watermelon field or a tobacco field, but you can survive on it. You can also have a non-irrigated pasture, which is what everybody else in Florida does, is not use water for irrigation, 400 gallons per day per cow. That's what the irrigation requirement is for that farm. But you can have a forest, and land uses that have forests have very little footprint on the aquifer and on the springs. And then also you can restore the wetlands. Our wetlands have dried up, our groundwater being pulled down so much, and our wetlands being drained in Florida. We've lost the kidneys on the landscape that we're cleaning up this water naturally. We're going to have some impact, but wetlands are a good way to clean that up. This is a large wetland south of the city of Atlanta. Clayton County, Georgia, has put in hundreds of acres of wetlands so that they'll have a reliable water supply. While Atlanta's water supply dried up a couple of years ago, Clayton County recycled their wastewater through the wetlands and into their drinking water reservoir. And they've got wonderful water quality, and they've got a very environmentally sensitive way of providing good water quality. And so the message is there is a rosy future. There is a possible future where we don't have to live outside our limits, but we're not headed there. We're not anywhere on that path, no matter what you hear from DEP and the water management districts. We're going still in the opposite direction from where we need to go. And I hope that through your involvement and your interest in Springs and Silver Springs, you can help us get back on the right path. Thank you.